Okay, so show her this. Oh, there's a kitty. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay. This is from Morgan County. Most of this is very similar to what a lot of the ginseng diggers use. Most of them are just a handmade tool. One end is sharp, and one end usually has more than 1 or 2 points. You got to be very careful in digging it out because you don't want to damage the root. You don't want to cut the root in two for sure, and you got to be careful to just kind of dig around it. A lot of times the root, if it's a big enough plant, will be going under other rocks or under other roots, and you got to be careful not to break it when you take it out.
So it usually grows with other things?
Yeah, it's in the woods, so there's all kinds of that it's mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you kind of got to just have a knack to find it. A lot of people don't see it because it's literally green everywhere that time of year, and it's in the woods.
Why do you feel like it's a knack? Like, what makes that knack?
Some are better than others. A friend of mine, a real good friend of mine named Cotton Morgan. He's actually
Cotton Morgan.
He was the guard that got shot and killed on that jailbreak several years ago out of Brushy Mountain Prison.
Mm-hmm.
And he was transporting a prisoner, and I would go with him a lot, and I can spot it, but it's like he could see it.
Like he had a fourth sense or something.
Yeah, he could see it way across the way. Somebody is extremely good at it is Darren Kelly.
Yeah. When he can find arrowheads and stuff.
Yes,
he has like this weird sixth sense.
Yes, he does. I can be going through the woods though and not looking for it. Like, for example, if I'm in the Smoky Mountains, obviously I don't dig it, it's illegal. But if I'm walking on a trail, I can see it amongst all of the other plants.
Mm-hmm.
It's so similar, but yet it's so different.
Mm-hmm.
The plant is almost perfect, how it's divided in the middle and spreads out. You never want to dig anything smaller than a 3-prone. Technically, it's best to get 4 and 5 prones. 5s are kind of rare.
So that's the leaves.
That's the prones. That's the sprouts.
Oh, okay.
And then there's leaves on each sprout.
Uh-huh.
And in the middle of that sprout is the part that has the berries that turn red.
Right.
So if you are wanting to be smart about it and sort of regenerate, there is a season. A lot of people dig it out of season. But the
what
season
makes the difference?
Is the berries get ripe and very red.
Uh-huh.
And if the berries aren't ripe and red, it's not going to repopulate. So we're going to kill this, and it'll become extinct basically if people are digging it out of season.
Oh.
Or they're digging like a 1-prone don't have berries. I don't think 2 prones do either that I can ever remember. 3 prones and 4 and 5 will have the big berry pod in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So you want it to regenerate so you can go back, and so your kids and their grandkids can go and dig it.
Right.
So you don't want to dig it out of season. You don't want to dig it off state parks and state land. You need to go where you have permission. If you go to where you don't have permission, especially in some of the hills and mountains around East Tennessee, you could literally get shot or get shot at.
So, like, it's so important to people?
Yes.
Really?
I've actually had some stolen off my dad's property. It does not feel good to know.
Why do you feel like it's so special?
What I had, I would plant it as a young guy. I would go dig.
So you can plant it?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
you can move it. And I would sometimes,
so
even though I wouldn't.
But you can't plant it from a seed.
No, well, yeah, you could bring the berries
okay.
if they're red. But a lot of times, if I was in a place that I knew was heavily trafficked by other people digging ginseng, sometimes I would dig some of the one prones, but the roots are too small to sell. Not to waste them, I would take them and move them to my property.
Okay.
And I go and check on it every year, and even
but you can't farm them. Like you
no,
can't have...
a person that buys the roots can tell if it's been cultivated, if it's been fertilized, just by looking at the roots. They can tell the difference. Now, what I planted, they couldn't. It would be legit because I actually planted it in the woods on the side of a hill.
That's cool.
But people that grow them and treat them like a crop, you can tell. You can, a really good people that buy it can tell the difference. So, the reason I did this, and a lot of people will do that, is they will go and be able to tell when's the best time to start digging it. Even though there is a season, you still can go look at your own plants and see when the berries are turning red and about to fall off.
Okay.
You can also train your eye. Just go checking on it.
So is it more potent at some point, or is it the same?
It's probably more, but there's a reason, that the ginseng buyers only, they'll buy all of it, but it doesn't bring as much value. It doesn't bring as much per pound.
Okay.
I remember growing up as a teenager, I would go dig it, and I would take it to my local market that had the old-timey scales with the chain, and
that's cool.
And I would ask them they would use it to, when they weighed fruits and vegetables or certain things for their customers that come in, to tell them, how much it weighed, so they know how much to bill their customers. They would let me weigh my ginseng root in there so I could get an idea how much I had, so I know how much to sell it. But basically, a shoebox of dried ginseng root, you got to let it dry out, is about a pound.
Okay.
Now, I dried mine. A lot of people dry them different ways. Some people just let them dry out. Of course, you couldn't do this today. Somebody would break your window out. But I would put aluminum foil in a car sometimes on the dash and lay my ginseng root on the aluminum foil and let it dry out quicker.
Why in your car? Could you just do
The
this?
heat from the sun, how hot it gets in a car. If you leave a pet or a baby in the car, the window's up, it's so much hotter than outside. So for that reason.
But even if you just did it outside, it
would.
would...
Yeah, but if you left it out in the open, animals would eat it. So it needs to be in a car or in or in your house.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to leave it laid out.
Though,
No, and in today's time, somebody would literally, the ginseng might be worth more than your old car.
Wow.
So don't do that now. There is still places like in Morgan County, for example, you can be driving down the road and you'll see signs, "We buy your ginseng." So yes, and I used to sell mine to a guy named Oopie Parks, and I always sold to him because he was fair. He was fair to me. I trusted him. I knew his scales. Another reason, though, you weigh it ahead of time, too, to be honest. You know how much you have when you go in there. And if he had, cheated scales or something,
So people would do that?
Yeah, oh, yeah. So you could say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I know this weighs a pound. And he'd say, no, it's just a half a pound. No,
I had to check.
Right. Yeah. So there's, but if you find somebody you trust, and that's like anything else, though, you still need to weigh it, because a lot of times people will gain your trust, and then that's the ones that will rip you off.
Oh, yeah.
So, so still...
So it's kind of a dirty business.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I mean, people, they set booby traps, they set...
Really?
All kinds of stuff to keep you away from their ginseng, especially if it's on their private land.
Oh, my goodness.
Today's time, people will use the
Video?
field cams for deers that people use to set up to watch for deer. They'll put it in those areas, and if somebody crosses it, it will set it off, and they know somebody's close to their ginseng.
They'll get their shotgun.
Yes. A lot of people, if they know where it's at ahead of time, they'll find it in the daytime and they'll take flashlights and go dig it and steal it at night.
Oh, wow.
But some of the other things about ginseng, you can find a lot more of it. Now, this is just my experience and what I've been told from older generations on down. And speaking of that, a lot of times you'll find your honey holes or your apt areas to find it from old timers that will say, hey, did you go over to Summers Holler?
Mm-hmm.
Or did you go over to Taylor Holler or on Lone Mountain or on Wilson? You know, they'll tell you places to go because that's where they dug it.
Mm-hmm.
And since they dug it properly and left the small and only dug it after it, they knew that you would be able to find some there.
So they would
make
tell
sure
the next generation.
Yes,
had it.
and they would. My Uncle Wade, which is also Darren's great uncle, but my uncle, he would tell me where to go find it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'd always find it, always where he would tell me. And the bigger size roots, you don't find as much of it, typically grows on the south side of the mountain. I don't know the reason why. It may just be something that happened in the county I lived in, but I've always been told, and that's what I have found, I don't find as much of it, but I find bigger plants, bigger roots on the south side of the mountain. On the north side of the mountain, you'll find bigger clusters of groups of ginseng.
But they're smaller. Yeah, but there's more clusters.
Yeah. And you can,
cool.
Now one other thing, and it's probably just because of where I was at, but you don't just, if you see some ginseng, you don't just get excited and stick your hand down there and get ready to start digging it. Because in the mountains in East Tennessee, you might get more than you bargained for, like a rattlesnake or a copperhead bite.
Right.
So take your walking stick and move the other weeds and plants away. Just sort of, push it away to make sure nothing's there to bite you.
No critters.
No critters and right there to bother you. And then after you've done that, I generally would stop before I'd start digging, and I would look around the woods to make sure anybody else didn't see me digging, for the simple reason of I didn't want nobody to find my spots.
Right.
And I'm not going to say where it was, but when I was a teenager, I would go by myself to maybe some state parks or so forth. And I would have to look around to make sure there was no park rangers around when I'd been down to dig it.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Allegedly.
Yes, if that had happened. But anyway.
Is there any, folklore, things that, your grandma would say about it?
Well, I've just always heard that most of it is sold to China. Mm-hmm. It is supposed to be a root that, helps you be able to produce. I'm not
reproductive.
Reproductive.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
And I always thought, well, China never had no problem with that. So maybe there's something to it. But yes, and it has a lot of other health things. If you'll look, a lot of your healthy food ingredients, some of your energy drinks will have ginseng listed in the ingredients here in America too. Uh-huh. But the Chinese eat it up. They love it still. They buy it. By far is the biggest customer. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there'll be tariffs on it. But anyway, it's very important to them. And if I'm not mistaken, it only grows in East Tennessee, Virginia, Cumberland Plateau, the Appalachia Mountains.
Yeah. How weird. I wonder why it's only just in Appalachia. It
must just be the perfect weather conditions, the perfect temperature, the perfect soil. Yeah. Just a combination of all of those things. Mm-hmm.
So do you get a high whenever you're?
Oh, it's just a buzz. It would be like comparing it to a hunter scene, and you see some ginseng. It's like seeing a buck and getting your chance to either draw or put the crosshairs on the buck. Or if you're fishing and you get a strike from a largemouth bass. It's just exciting when that happens. And there's a lot of work to it. Most of it now, you have to travel many miles through the woods to find it. And you actually, a lot of the places I would look for is some of the hardest, steepest ridges to climb, because of a lot of people won't go to that much effort.
Right.
So I would go to that much effort because I knew that not as many people are going to go to that effort, and a lot of the older people probably can't anymore. Right. And a lot of the young people these days don't care or don't even know what it is. So, around the bluffs, around real rocky areas, on the steepest side, it can grow, and it's just.
So it can grow in a field. It can grow in.
Yeah, I've never seen it grow in the field, but I'm sure it probably could.
It's mostly on the mountains.
It's in the woods and the mountains.
Okay.
But again, if it's grown in a field, it's not going to. They'll know. The ginseng buyer will know.
Okay, last question.
Sure.
What is your best story of you?
Well, I've got several, but one time most of the time I went by myself. My most successful hunting, fishing, any kind of stuff is just when I was younger. I even went frog gigging by myself. It was when I was alone. And there's this one time I drove my four-wheeler to the top of the mountain. I chained it to a tree, and I was a long ways from it, down into the deep, into a holler. And actually I got two, so you can decide, because it reminded me of another one. But I did exactly what I told you not to do a while ago. And I reached down, and a snake striked at me, and it didn't hit me. I'm not making this up, or I would have said that. But as it struck at me, I took my hand and I knocked my glasses off my face. Well, if you wear glasses, you need them, right?
Right.
So I was fumbling around in the woods trying to fill my glasses, realizing there's a snake there somewhere. So maybe I didn't put as much effort looking for them as I should have. And that particular day, I got no sane, lost my glasses, and had to make my way back to the four-wheeler. So that was
sight.
Well, I can see pretty good, but
So that's another name for it, is sane. Is there any other?
Just sane. That's all I know is sane or ginseng. But most of people just call it sane.
Okay.
But one of the other times I was ginsenging, and I was at the bottom of similar to where I was then, or close, probably 2 or 3 miles from where I was that other time. And I look up on the side of the ridge, and I see this huge buck running. And I'm standing there with my walking stick. I didn't have a gun. I just had a walking stick. And I was sitting there and I was watching this buck just make its way down the side of the mountain. And I was thinking, how beautiful. But man, it was flying. And I'm thinking, I don't see anything chasing it or what spooked it.
Right.
But it was moving on like a crazy animal. And then it got closer and closer and closer, to the point I was like taking my walking stick, yelling, doing this.
Yeah, trying to
so
scare
the
it
buck
off.
would go to one side of me or the other, because it could have run me over. And it moved, obviously, to one side or the other, and it ran. It just kept going. I don't know if a coyote had spooked it, or a bobcat, or what. Something had spooked it pretty badly.
Really?
And grandma got run over by a reindeer. I felt that. So, anyway, it was close. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
That was fun.
All right.